The Russians thought they had solved the drone problem. After months of watching their tanks, armored vehicles, and infantry columns get torn apart by Ukrainian FPV drones dropping munitions from above, Russian field engineers came up with an answer that has become one of the most recognizable and most ridiculed images of this war: the turtle tank. The concept is crude but logical in a desperate kind of way. Take a main battle tank, a T-72B3 or a T-80B VM, and weld metal plates, steel cages, chain-link screens, and sheet metal over every exposed surface. The roof, the turret, the engine deck, the sides, everything covered. Add electronic jamming equipment to disrupt drone control signals. The result is a vehicle that looks like it crawled out of a post-apocalyptic film, ugly, heavy, slow, but theoretically protected from the small explosive payloads that FPV drones carry. Russian military propaganda channels celebrated the turtle tanks. Videos circulated showing the armored monstrosities rolling through muddy fields, their crews confident behind layers of improvised protection. Russian commanders reportedly told their soldiers that these vehicles were the answer, that with turtle tanks leading the assault, Ukrainian drones could not stop them, that the tide was turning. Just days ago, somewhere in eastern Ukraine, that theory was tested in combat. 6 Russian turtle tanks, supported by infantry in armored personnel carriers and on foot, were sent forward in a coordinated assault on Ukrainian defensive positions. The attack was planned as a breakthrough, a concentrated armored thrust designed to punch through Ukrainian lines and open a gap for follow-on Russian forces. Within 2 hours, all 6 turtle tanks were destroyed. The infantry that had followed them was scattered, decimated, and routed. The breakthrough never happened, and Ukrainian drone operators added 6 more kills to a tally that already numbers in the thousands. This is how it happened. And this is why Russia's desperate improvisations cannot save an army that is losing a war of innovation against an enemy that adapts faster, thinks smarter, and fights harder than anything Russia's military has faced in its modern history. The assault began in the early morning hours, while darkness still covered the flat, frozen terrain of eastern Ukraine. The 6 turtle tanks moved in a staggered column formation along a dirt road that led toward a Ukrainian strongpoint, a fortified position built around a destroyed village that Ukrainian defenders had held for months against repeated Russian assaults. Behind the tanks, 3 BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles carried approximately 30 Russian soldiers, with another 20 to 30 infantry moving on foot in loose formation, using the turtle tanks as mobile cover. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones detected the column almost immediately. A surveillance drone operating at altitude picked up the thermal signatures of the vehicles and the infantry, hot engines, warm bodies, all of it glowing against the cold ground on the thermal display. The Ukrainian brigade commander monitoring the feed recognized the turtle tank configuration instantly. These were not standard armored vehicles. These were the heavily modified machines that Russian forces had been increasingly deploying in recent weeks, and Ukrainian drone teams had been studying them, analyzing their construction, and, most importantly, identifying their weaknesses. Stay with this story. What the Ukrainian drone operators discovered about these so-called invincible machines in the next 60 seconds changed the outcome of the entire battle. The weakness of the turtle tank is not a secret to anyone who understands basic engineering. When you weld tons of additional metal onto a vehicle designed to carry a specific load, several things happen simultaneously. The vehicle becomes heavier, significantly heavier. This means it moves slower, it consumes more fuel, its engine overheats more quickly, its tracks and suspension wear out faster. Its ability to traverse soft or muddy terrain, the kind of terrain that covers most of eastern Ukraine in late winter, is severely compromised. But the most critical vulnerability is simpler than any of that. The welded cages and metal screens that cover the turtle tank create a sealed environment. The crew inside cannot see effectively in any direction. Their optics are partially blocked. Their ability to identify threats is reduced. And the improvised armor, while it may deflect or detonate a drone's payload before it reaches the tank's actual hull, creates something that experienced Ukrainian drone operators recognized immediately. Gaps. Gaps at the joints where metal plates meet. Gaps where the cage structure connects to the turret ring. Gaps at the rear, near the engine exhaust, where the additional armor must allow airflow to prevent the engine from overheating. And one critical gap that no amount of welding can eliminate: the top rear section of the turret, where the armor is thinnest and where a drone approaching from a steep angle can bypass the cage entirely and strike the vulnerable ammunition storage beneath. Ukrainian FPV drone teams had been practicing this exact attack profile for weeks. They had studied drone footage of turtle tanks from previous engagements. They had identified the precise angles of approach that could defeat the improvised armor. And on this morning, 6 of the best-trained drone operators in the Ukrainian armed forces were waiting with their aircraft loaded and ready. The first turtle tank died 400 meters from the Ukrainian positions. The lead vehicle had slowed to navigate a patch of soft ground, its additional weight causing the tracks to sink into mud that a standard tank might have crossed without difficulty. As it struggled, a Ukrainian FPV drone launched from a concealed position and approached from the rear at a steep downward angle. The operator, watching through the drone's camera, fingers steady on the controls, guided the aircraft over the top of the welded cage, found the gap near the engine deck, and drove the drone directly into the vulnerable rear section. The explosion was not large by battlefield standards, but it was precisely placed. The drone's warhead detonated against the tank's rear armor, the thinnest section on any main battle tank, and the resulting penetration ignited the fuel system. Within seconds, the turtle tank was burning, thick black smoke pouring from the gaps in its improvised armor shell, the crew trapped inside a metal coffin of their own making. Which is more terrifying for a Russian tank crew, dying in a standard tank that can at least see the enemy, or dying inside a welded metal box that blocks your vision, slows your movement, and burns around you? Tell us in the comments. The column halted. The second and third turtle tanks attempted to maneuver around the burning wreck of the first. But the road was narrow, the terrain on either side was soft, and the additional weight of the turtle modifications made off-road movement agonizingly slow. The vehicles lurched and struggled, their tracks churning mud, their engines screaming under loads they were never designed to carry. Ukrainian drone operators did not wait. A second FPV drone hit the third turtle tank, the one furthest back in the column, trapping the formation between 2 burning vehicles. The classic killbox tactic. First and last vehicles destroyed. Everything in between, locked in place, unable to advance, unable to retreat, unable to maneuver. The destruction that followed was methodical and devastating. Ukrainian drone teams launched wave after wave of FPV aircraft, each one targeted at a specific vehicle, each one guided by operators who knew exactly where to strike. The second turtle tank was hit through a gap in the welded plates on the left side of the turret. The warhead detonated against the turret ring, jamming it in place and wounding the crew. A follow-up drone struck the engine deck, setting the vehicle on fire. The crew attempted to bail out through the top hatches, but the welded cage that was supposed to protect them now trapped them, the hatches partially blocked by metal plates that had been bolted over them. 2 crew members escaped. The others did not. The fourth turtle tank's crew abandoned their vehicle before a drone even hit it. They saw what was happening to the vehicles around them, recognized they were trapped in a death zone, and made the decision that Russian military discipline was supposed to prevent. They fled. They opened whatever hatches they could, squeezed through the gaps in the welded armor, and ran toward the nearest tree line. A Ukrainian drone operator tracked them but held fire. Ukrainian forces prioritized destroying equipment over pursuing fleeing soldiers when the tactical situation allows. The 5th and 6th turtle tanks attempted to reverse down the road, backing away from the carnage ahead of them. One made it approximately 200 meters before its overheated engine failed. The vehicle ground to a halt, smoke pouring from the exhaust, the crew abandoning it as Ukrainian drones circled overhead. The last turtle tank managed to retreat nearly 500 meters before a Ukrainian FPV drone caught it from the side, striking the tracks and immobilizing it. The crew evacuated, and Ukrainian artillery subsequently destroyed the abandoned vehicle to prevent Russian recovery teams from retrieving it. 6 turtle tanks, 6 destroyed or abandoned, 2 hours. The Russian assault was over before it reached the Ukrainian lines, but the tanks were only part of the disaster. Look at what happened to the Russian infantry. This is the part of the battle that reveals the true human cost of Russia's failed tactical innovations. The 30 Russian soldiers in the 3 BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles and the 20 to 30 on foot had been following the turtle tanks, using the massive armored vehicles as mobile shields against Ukrainian fire. When the lead turtle tank was destroyed and the column stopped, the infantry was caught in the open on a flat, muddy field with no cover, no concealment, and no way to advance or retreat without being seen by the Ukrainian drones circling above. The BMP-3 vehicles attempted to disgorge their infantry and provide covering fire. But Ukrainian FPV drones targeted them as well. One BMP-3 was hit within minutes of stopping, its thin armor offering no resistance to the drone's warhead. The other two attempted to reverse, but were struck by Ukrainian artillery that had pre-registered the road as a likely axis of Russian advance. Both vehicles were destroyed, their ammunition cooking off in secondary explosions that sent columns of smoke rising above the tree line. The Russian infantry on foot found themselves in the worst possible tactical position. Exposed in an open field, their armored support burning around them, enemy drones circling overhead, and Ukrainian sniper and machine gun positions in the fortified village ahead. Some tried to advance toward the Ukrainian positions, perhaps hoping to get close enough that the drones could not engage without risking friendly fire. Ukrainian machine gunners, experienced fighters who had defended this position through weeks of Russian assaults, cut them down at 300 meters with disciplined, accurate fire. Others tried to run back down the road, past the burning vehicles, toward Russian lines. Ukrainian FPV drones pursued them across the frozen ground, the operators tracking fleeing Russian soldiers with thermal cameras. Others simply dropped into the mud, lay flat, and waited, hoping the drones would pass them by, hoping the battle would end, hoping for rescue that would not come for hours. Some of those Russian soldiers who dropped to the ground were still lying in the mud when Ukrainian infantry patrols reached the area later that day. Several were found with their weapons abandoned beside them, their hands visible, their will to fight completely broken. These were not elite soldiers. According to intercepted communications and subsequent intelligence analysis, most of the infantry committed to this assault were recently mobilized men, given minimal training, handed equipment, and told to follow the turtle tanks forward. They had been told the tanks were invincible. They had been told the assault would succeed. They had been told that the Ukrainian defenses were weak and crumbling. According to multiple battlefield sources and post-engagement analysis, the total Russian infantry casualties from this assault were estimated at 40 to 60 killed or seriously wounded, out of approximately 50 to 60 troops committed to the attack. A casualty rate of over 80%. How many modified turtle tanks do you think Russia has lost since the tactic was introduced? A. 10 to 20, B. 30-50, C. Over 50. Drop your answer below. Now let us calculate the cost of Russia's 2-hour disaster. The turtle tanks were based on T-72B3 and T-80BVM main battle tanks, Russia's primary frontline armor. The base cost of a T-72B3 is approximately $1 to $1.5 million. The T-80BVM is more expensive, approximately $3 to $4 million each. The turtle modifications, the welded armor, cages, electronic jammers, additional equipment, add an estimated $200,000 to $400,000 per vehicle, including labor, materials, and installation. Total estimated value of the 6 destroyed turtle tanks, $10 to $18 million. But the replacement cost tells only part of the story. Russia's tank inventory is finite and shrinking. Open-source intelligence tracking indicates that Russia has lost over 11,600 tanks since the full-scale invasion began. Russia's tank production, new build and refurbishment combined, is estimated at approximately 200 units per year. At the current rate of attrition, Russia is losing tanks far faster than it can replace them. Every destroyed turtle tank is not just a financial loss. It is a step closer to the day when Russia runs out of tanks entirely. The 3 BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles add another layer of cost. Each BMP-3 costs approximately $500,000 to $800,000. 3 destroyed, $1.5 to $2.4 million. And like the tanks, BMP-3 production is limited and cannot keep pace with losses. The infantry losses carry their own economic weight. Training a Russian soldier, even the minimal training that most mobilized troops receive before deployment, costs approximately $20,000 to $30,000 per soldier. 40 to 60 soldiers killed or wounded represents a training replacement cost of approximately $1 to $2 million. But the true cost is measured in unit cohesion, the loss of experienced fighters who knew the terrain, knew the enemy positions, and knew how to survive. Their replacements will arrive with less training, less experience, and less chance of surviving their first week at the front. The ammunition expended in the failed assault, tank rounds loaded but never fired, mortar rounds carried by infantry, supplies staged for the breakthrough that never happened, adds another estimated $500,000 to $1 million in wasted resources. The fuel consumed by 6 overweight, overheating turtle tanks and 3 BMP-3s during the approach adds roughly $50,000 to $100,000 in diesel that Russia's strained logistics system must now replace. Total estimated Russian losses from this single 2-hour engagement: 6 turtle tanks destroyed or abandoned, $10 to $18 million. 3 BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles destroyed, $1.5 to $2.4 million. Infantry casualties, 40 to 60 soldiers, $1 to $2 million in training replacement. Wasted ammunition and supplies, $500,000 to $1 million. Fuel and logistics costs, $50,000 to $100,000. Failed assault, operational costs including planning, staging, reserves, estimated $1 to $2 million. Total, $14 to $25 million. Add the strategic cost, the failed breakthrough that was supposed to open a new avenue of advance, the days of delay while Russian commanders replan, the morale impact on Russian soldiers who watched their supposedly invincible new weapons burn, and the true figure rises significantly higher. Conservative total estimate including strategic impact, $20 to $31 million. The cost of the Ukrainian FPV drones that destroyed the turtle tanks, approximately $500 to $1,000 each. 8 to 10 drones used in the engagement. Total drone expenditure, $5,000 to $10,000. Add the artillery rounds and the reconnaissance drone time, and the total Ukrainian cost for the operation was approximately $50,000 to $80,000. $50,000 to destroy $31 million in Russian military assets. That is a cost exchange ratio of over 400 to 1. If facts like these expose the reality behind Russian military propaganda, type truth in the comments. What do you think Russia will try next? More turtle tanks, or something even more desperate? Tell us below. The turtle tank is not a weapon system, it is a symptom. It is what happens when a military runs out of effective countermeasures and starts improvising with welding torches and scrap metal. It is what happens when commanders care more about appearing to have a solution than actually solving the problem. It is what happens when an invading army, bleeding tanks and soldiers at an unsustainable rate, refuses to admit that the war it started is a war it cannot win. Ukrainian drone operators see the turtle tanks and they do not fear them. They study them. They analyze their construction from surveillance footage. They identify the joints, the gaps, the thermal signatures that reveal where the crew sits and where the ammunition is stored. They practice their approach angles in simulation, and when the turtle tanks finally appear on the battlefield, the Ukrainian operators already know exactly where to strike, exactly how to approach, and exactly how long the engagement will last. Every turtle tank Russia sends to Ukraine is a confession that standard Russian armor cannot survive against Ukrainian drones, a confession that Russian electronic warfare cannot reliably jam Ukrainian control frequencies, a confession that Russian air defense cannot clear the skies of small, cheap, lethal aircraft flown by operators who know exactly what they are doing, a confession that 3 years into this invasion, the Russian military is running out of real solutions and resorting to improvisation that would be considered absurd by any modern military standard. The irony is profound. Russia began this war believing it possessed one of the most powerful armored forces on Earth. Thousands of tanks, thousands of infantry fighting vehicles. A doctrine built around massed armored assaults smashing through enemy defenses with overwhelming force. That doctrine worked, in theory, against opponents who lacked precision anti-armor weapons, who lacked aerial surveillance, and who lacked the industrial capacity to produce cheap, effective countermeasures in massive quantities. Ukraine has all three. Ukrainian forces have precision anti-tank weapons supplied by Western allies and manufactured domestically. Ukrainian forces have an aerial surveillance network of drones that blankets the battlefield and provides real-time intelligence on every Russian movement. And Ukrainian industry is now producing millions of FPV drones per year, each one capable of destroying a tank that costs 1,000 times more. The Russian response to this reality has not been adaptation. It has been denial wrapped in welded metal. The turtle tank is not a tactical evolution. It is a desperate attempt to preserve a doctrine that the battlefield has already rendered obsolete. And every time Russia sends another column of turtle tanks toward Ukrainian positions, the Ukrainian defenders prove that obsolescence with fire, precision, and results that Moscow cannot explain away. The Russian soldiers who climbed into those 6 turtle tanks believed they were protected. Their commanders told them the welded armor would stop the drones. Their propaganda channels showed them videos of turtle tanks surviving hits. But propaganda does not stop shaped charge warheads. Welded cages do not eliminate every gap, and no amount of improvised steel can protect a crew from an enemy that adapts faster, innovates smarter, and fights with the conviction of a nation defending its own existence. 3 questions before you go. First, if 6 turtle tanks, Russia's latest and most heavily modified armored vehicles, were destroyed in under 2 hours by Ukrainian FPV drones costing $500 each, what does that tell us about the future of armored warfare and Russia's ability to sustain its invasion? Second, the Russian infantry that followed those tanks suffered over 80% casualties in a single engagement. How many more failed assaults like this can Russian ground forces absorb before the soldiers themselves refuse to advance? Third, Ukrainian drone production is accelerating from 4 million units last year to a target of 7 million this year. If a handful of drones can destroy an entire armored column in 2 hours today, what will the battlefield look like when Ukrainian drone capacity nearly doubles? Think about that. Subscribe to Steel Command, share this video. Russia keeps building new ways to protect its tanks from Ukrainian drones. Ukraine keeps finding new ways to destroy them. That cycle has only one possible ending, and the burning wreckage of 6 turtle tanks on a muddy road in eastern Ukraine is a preview of what that ending looks like.